specifically with regards to spectrum pricing. We saw the first round of auctions fail, and now the government has cut the prices marginally, about 30-odd%. Is that good enough from an industry point of view?
We have said that we, in those specific places, would like to see a different price. And let me explain why. I think there's a basic mistake being made, and which is actually based on all kind of consultations and advice that the government got. But it comes down to the fact that they have based the price for voice spectrum, which is 1800 spectrum they're talking about, they've based it on the outcome of the auction for 3G spectrum, which is basically data spectrum. Now, and you see exactly that in the pricing, because the data development will always start first in the metros, in the places where people are running around with the fancy devices, which we see, you know, the biggest uptake is in Mumbai and Delhi and those places, not in, believe me, in UP East or in Bihar. So the spectrum price for data came out very high in those places. Well, actually, if you look at voice, it's the other way around. The biggest voice opportunity today is actually in Bihar, probably. That's probably also why you saw in the 1800 auction that Bihar was the only circle where demand exceeded supply. Because actually the penetration is still around 40% there. So there is a lot more to go in voice. So the basis price is wrong, because if you talk about voice spectrum, 1800 megahertz is voice spectrum, 900 is voice spectrum today, then you should base yourself on what is the market and what can operators afford to pay for it. That's where it went wrong. That's why it was here and there very cheap in the non-metro areas, but it's far too expensive in the metro areas.
The court has now indicated that the government should auction all the spectrum that it possesses. Is that a good move, you think, the fact that at least now...
Basically, that's a good move, because I think, indeed, what happened was that the Supreme Court quashed these licenses and said, put it all up for auction again, and then suddenly the government squeezed in refarming, which the Supreme Court had never talked about, and we are basically thinking that it has never been thought through very well. But because of the refarming, they needed to reserve a certain portion of 1800 to give it to people who would then have to give up 900 spectrum. Now, the Supreme Court clearly has said that that combination, you know, shouldn't have been made, because this was only about 1800.
Right, so, you know, the government now indicates that, you know, it'll now probably have to have a relook at refarming as well, because now, like you said, they cannot earmark spectrum for refarming. Do you think now that could change the dynamics as well, because now we're going to understand that auctions are likely to be staggered over two phases? They'll first auction spectrum only in the circles where there was unsold bandwidth, which is the 4 circles. What's your sense on how this could play out as far as refarming is concerned?
Well, I think the whole concept of refarming is not well thought through, as I said, because in many countries where they do refarming, let's assume operators typically have 15 megahertz of 900, then the government comes and say, can I please take away a few megahertz, I'll give you back some 1800, and everyone is fine, because you still have 12 left or 11 or 10 left. Here it's a very different situation. They say, give it all to me, we only have very little, and then they say, give it all. That has a huge impact on the operators. And you have to realize, if you look at the customer numbers in the industry, in the last 5 years, this industry has added 650 million customers. The last 5 years. You can imagine that the majority of our networks has been built in the last 5 years. So if suddenly the government would take away my 900 spectrum, I would have to build a new network. I have to depreciate the network that I've just built. That's not fair. That is not, I think, how you treat a company that has opened the market, that has put billions of dollars into these investments. And then 5 years later you say, sorry, give it up, give it back to me. So we think that the whole idea of refarming, as it has been positioned so far, is really bad news for existing operators.
But do you think then it'll have to be legally challenged as well? Because on the other contentious issue, which is on one-time fee, over which all the GSM operators had raised concerns, legal recourse was exercised, and then we saw the court grant stay.
Well, we'll have to see how the government now deals with it, because I guess that after this week in the Supreme Court, also the government will have to go back to the drawing board, and I don't know what will come out of that.
But what's your sense? When will this whole regulatory uncertainty end? Because, you know, I was chatting with Sunil Mittal a few weeks ago, and he indicated that it will probably end in 3 to 6 months. Are you that optimistic? Do you see it ending at all?
Well, I know for sure that the license extension has a kind of hard stop, isn't it? It's November 2014, and 12 months before that you would expect to know what it is, because we also have to make our plans. If we would have, in theory, to swap a network, believe me, you cannot do that even in 12 months. We would need a lot of time for that. So it's not like an open-ended thing. This extension, license extension issue will, in a way, put a hard stop to it. I'm, on the other hand, not so optimistic, because we thought a year ago that it would have been resolved 6 months later, and it seems to be dragging on.
It's getting worse, and it gets worse, doesn't it? I mean, the uncertainty is not good for anyone. It's not good for investors. It's not good for companies. It's not good even for consumers.
No, I don't know what to say about it. I would love to be able to tell you that, 3 months from now it's all over and we're fine. It is a lot of uncertainty, and we have to deal with that as operators. But in between, I must say, let's look at the bright side of life. We are connecting new customers every day. I think people use the phone every day. People are very happy to use the phone. We see data is really growing. It's a fantastic opportunity. You know that India is pretty far behind the rest of Asia if it comes to broadband penetration, if it comes to internet usage. And that is, I think, exploding now. So I would love to be in a situation where we would have more capital available to invest in those networks and to open up those markets further, where now there's a lot of kind of negative energy around only payments to the government, spectrum payments, one-time payments, whatever payments. It's always about payments to the government. Where actually I think we should be far more worried. Do we have enough money to invest in the future for this country, its future citizens? Do they have access to internet? Do they have access to education? Is mHealth going to be stimulated enough? All these trends in the world.
I want to talk about ease of doing business in India, because I know you pride in calling yourself an Indian MNC, so to say. India ranks about, 132 in ease of doing business as per the World Bank and IFC report. As an Indian MNC, what's your sense? How easy or how tough is it to do business in a country like India?
Well, I can't say that it's easy, because that would be an obvious lie. At least I can only speak for telecoms. I've only worked here in telecoms. But I think it's a tough situation. It's a tough regulatory situation. Maybe there's a reason that it is tough. I don't know. But I've seen that in many countries where I have worked, that the regulation is not so detailed, and the government has more sympathy for the industry as a contributor to the development of the country. Where, in my view, what I've seen the last 2 years is the government sees it clearly here as the goose that lays the golden eggs. And it's fine, because, we work very hard and we pay a lot of money to the government in form of license fees, spectrum payments, even the taxes we pay a lot of money. But at a certain moment there needs to be a balance between the interest of the consumer, the interest of the government, and the interest of the shareholders of the company. And I think that balance is at this moment not right.
Specifically with regards to MNCs, and this is not necessarily with Vodafone, but a lot of other companies, we've been reporting a lot on some transfer pricing issues that have cropped up now. An income tax department sending a notice of 15,000 crores to a company, and a lot of such MNCs are facing these issues, whether it's Shell, whether it's Nokia. Does it outrage you at one level, the fact that these things just don't seem to be ending, and at one level you have a finance minister who's trying to sell the Indian story, go abroad, do road shows, he's in London meeting investors, asking them to invest in India, and back home, India, the MNCs aren't really treated that well?
Well, I can only speak for myself. I find it very difficult to speak for others, because I think all these tax issues are very complicated, so typically you need to know the detail before you can really make a serious judgment about it.
The point is not about a specific issue. I'm just saying in general.
I understand. Well, let me put it this way. I think that a lot of the noise around all these issues doesn't really help to attract foreign investment. That is for sure.
And what's the way out? I mean, how can this balance be struck, between revenue maximization on the one hand and, the interest of the consumers and shareholders on the other hand? Is there a right balance at all? How does one
Yeah, there is a right balance, in my view. I think that probably at this moment the government is very stretched for money due to a certain limit of the budget deficit that they want to achieve, which I understand from a political perspective. But at a certain moment that cannot structurally go on always, is it? So I think there needs to be a better balance between what companies can do for the country, read it, the government being then the representative of the country, but also they have to make a return for their shareholders, because in the end the money will stop flowing, isn't it? I always say the money can only come from two sources, and you see it clearly in our industry. It can come from shareholders, it can come from banks. I think banks have already given up to give money to Indian operators. So will shareholders put more money in? They will be probably willing to do that if they see a return in the future. So that's where I think the environment should facilitate that the government in a way also stimulates the economy by saying, yes, you can make a return. Yes, if you make an investment in telecoms, don't worry about it. It will be a good investment in the future. And I think at this moment investors are worried about that.
But are shareholders also worried, and do you find it tougher to get more capital now to invest in a market like India, given the regulatory uncertainty?
I think telecoms is a very long-term play, so we never invest with a very short horizon, and you also know that in markets that are less developed there is a bit more volatility around these processes than there might be in more developed markets. But at the same time, I can only speak for Vodafone. We have a huge commitment to the country. As I said, we have invested 50,000 crores in the last few years. We are here to stay, so it's not easy to scare us off. But does it mean that it's nice? No, it would be much nicer if I could also send from time to time some dividend back to London. And we have not done that in 6 years. We only it's all one-way money that comes in here, and we never send something back. That's in the end not sustainable.
And there will be a day when when shareholders, and rightly so, will sit up and say, should I go on pumping more money into a market?
Yeah, I think that's indeed the question. Are shareholders willing to do that?
Right. I want to talk about the other contentious issue that needs to be resolved, which is, of course, the tax dispute. And I understand that settlement talks are going on. I just want to get a sense from you on how hopeful are you that this issue will get resolved one way or the other?
Well, I've said this before, this is really an issue between the Indian government and our shareholder who bought the company. The company itself is not part of that discussion. I can only say, as the company, we would be, of course, very glad if this could be resolved, because it always comes back and it is always, in a way, with a negative connotation on the name of the company and the brand. So, purely as a company speaking, I would hope that it gets resolved as soon as possible.
On a personal note, Marten, how has it been for you in India, adjusting to life in this country? I know you've been in Mumbai now for a while now, you're getting used to living here. How has it been for you personally, coping with this madness?
I enjoy every day being in India. It's a fantastic country. The people are extremely nice and friendly, and I must say I have a fantastic team in the company. So I'm really very, very happy being here, and I can say the same for my wife who came with me, and she's enjoying every day. We love the country.
If only
yes,
the regulators
there are issues, but there are also lots of positives about the country, and we enjoy those a lot.
So if only the regulators were a little more sympathetic, it
That's
would be
the business side of it, Business is never easy.
Personally, it's been nice.
Personally, it has been very good. India has treated us very well.
Marten, I wish a year later you'd say that the same for Vodafone as well, that India has treated you very well. But thank you so much for taking the time and joining us right here on ET Now. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.